Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our virtual webinar and live streaming meeting. I would like to start with the flag salute. So could everybody please rise? And on the count of three, 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and you can be seated. Mrs. Callahan, if you would start out with the roll call, please.
Certainly. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Weisberg,
I'm here.
Ms. Bays,
Present.
Ms. Brooks,
Here.
Ms. Epstein,
Here.
Ms. Gillior,
Here.
Mr. Greenstein.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so welcome everybody. I hope you enjoyed the break, and for those who celebrated, had a happy holiday or holidays. Tonight, we're going to be taking live community comments as we had started to do at our last meeting. I'd like to explain a little bit more about the process because I know there's been a couple of questions about how to do it and how it works. We're welcoming questions and comments from the community at the outset of the meeting, which will be right after I finish speaking now. And so they'll be right after and then again right before we adjourn. Now, for those of you who hadn't attended board meetings before last March, this was the way that we did it. This is the practice that has been in place for many years. There's 2 sets of community comments, one at the outset and one at the conclusion. When we were live in person back in the auditorium or in the library, people would stand up at the mic and line up at the mic rather at the opening and again at the close and speak, and each person had a 3-minute limitation on how long they could go. If you wanted to speak again, and this is true now, you can get back in line and speak again, but it's 3 minutes per person, per questions or per comments. It's also our general practice not to respond to questions during the meeting. In order to ask a live question, you have to be on the webinar and not watching via the live stream. For anyone who wants to switch over to the webinar so you can ask a live question, the link is on our website. In order to get the virtual, in order to get into the virtual line and make a comment, what you need to do is press the raise hand function rather on your screen, and you'll be called on by one of the vice presidents, either Emily or Beth will call on you. The chat function is something different, and it's disabled for the meeting, so don't try using the chat. Also, the raise hand function won't be functional except during the live comment period. Okay, on the topic of in-person meetings, there is some news. Although we're still unable to hold in-person meetings with the public due to the guidelines and the building protocols, we are attempting, and I think we're going to succeed, we're going to be able to go live for the next meeting. The tech department is working on this. And what this will mean is that the board and the administrators will be together in person in one room, socially distanced, of course, and we will be through a webinar and a live stream. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to be worked out, but the community will still be watching on a screen, but we will be together in one room, which is really good. I mean, I'm looking very forward to sitting in the same room with the colleagues that I've been looking at on the screen for the last year. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's not quite the way we were pre-COVID, but we're getting back there. This week is assistant principal Appreciation Week, so thank you for your service to the assistant principals. And tomorrow is Paraprofessional Appreciation Day. On behalf of the entire board, I want to thank our paras for their extraordinary contribution to our students and to our community. And the paras are the educational assistants, teaching assistants, and our technology aides. Among many other things they do is they work with the most at-risk students, and they're serving as mentors and role models. During the COVID crisis, the paras have gone above and beyond their many contractual responsibilities, and simply put, we could not be reopening the schools without them. They've been on the front lines since the first day. So I would like to just thank them for their unwavering commitment, professionalism, and compassion for every student and for our community. Thanks for being here tonight to everybody out there. And now is the time for live community comments. So if you have something, please.
Jordan Wolf has
raise
his
your
hand.
virtual hand. What?
Jordan Wolf has his hand up. I'm going to allow him to talk. So, Mr. Wolf, you can speak if you've unmuted.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. At the last meeting, Dr. Hines announced that schools were going to be opening 5 days for the middle and high school. I've written emails to him and copied the board asking what is happening to students who choose to stay fully remote. Earlier this year, live streaming full-time was deemed to be an inadequate way for students to learn, as was evidenced by the Unity plan that opened the elementary virtual learning community. I'm curious what exactly has changed that now live streaming is being deemed acceptable as a 5-day solution for students who are remaining remote.
Okay, well, like I said, we don't answer questions, but somebody can get back to you with a response to that. Are there any other live questions? No other questions?
Yes, sorry. I just got a hand up. Elizabeth Jordan. You please unmute and you may speak.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have the agenda in front of me, so I'm not sure that I'm using the correct term, but I was looking at the document that you're approving tonight, having to do with the security plan for the next school year, 2021-22. And I had two questions about it. One is that the document said that the public must have an opportunity to comment on the plan before it is approved. I may have missed the announcement of when that opportunity took place, but anyway, I was wondering when that opportunity was. The other thing is there is a list of people who are responsible for carrying out the plans. I don't quite understand why, as it is a plan for the next school year, there are people whose names on there who have already announced their retirement at the end of this school year or even before that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And also, Mr. Wolf, thank you for your question before. I think I failed to mention that. Somebody will look into that, about people being listed who are retiring. Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Are there any other questions?
No.
Okay, well, as I said before, there's a second opportunity at the end of this meeting, so we will have that. We'll have comments later on. Now I'm going to move to adopt the agenda of tonight, April 6th. Do I have a second? Okay, Mrs. Weisberg Ms. Callahan, could you do the roll call, please?
Yes, Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Weisberg,
Yes.
Ms. Bays,
Yes.
Ms. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Epstein,
Yes.
Ms. Gilliar,
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now up to, thank you. We're up to item 7 on the agenda if people are following. And it's the enrollment report by Dr. Shields.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. Since our last board meeting, we did have an updated enrollment report that came out on March 24th. We have 5,218 students. That's 183 students less than we had this time last year. Only a 2-student difference from where we were at the last enrollment report. For a breakdown, that's 125 from last year less at the elementary level, 1 less at the middle school level, and 57 less at the high school level. At the last board meeting, the question was asked about enrollment in our kindergarten for next year. So I wanted to make sure the board had an update on that, that so far we have 292 students enrolled in kindergarten for September. We have a projection of 391. So we do have several months before we open school, but that's where we are so far in the enrollment of next year's kindergarten class. I also wanted to give you an update from our transportation office, who monitors the parochial and private school transportation requests. That request is traditionally has to be made by April 1st. Ms. Callahan made us aware today that the governor has changed that deadline to April 20th this year. But so far, the numbers of requests are down from where they were last year. Right now at about 70 students down, but yet there's another few weeks before the deadline comes on April 20th. So we will continue to monitor that request and the kindergarten enrollment as we move forward.
Thank you. Dr. Hines, would you like to?
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, President Johnson. Thank you for all of our community members who are joining us this evening. I know for a large part of our board discussion this evening, we'll talk about the budget once again. So I want to thank Ms. Callahan for all of her hard work. This is her last presentation, as many of us know. So your professionalism is very much appreciated, as well as your knowledge about putting us in the right place to make this work for next year. As many of us know, we transitioned from spring break to coming back, and we've been spending a lot of time over the break installing desk shields at Schreiber. I spent a lot of time over the past 2 days, as well as some of our cabinet members as well, walking through the hallways, both at Weber and at Schreiber. I know it's different for our students, that's for sure. But again, following the New York State Department of Health guidelines, this will allow us to bring our students back come before the end of April. And I want to thank our committee meetings, the building level committee meetings, for meeting and making this happen, and more information to come. And again, I'm not sure if I stated this at our last board meeting. I think I did. I'll be speaking to all of our students before they re-enter. So we're setting that up as we speak as well. I'll be speaking to each grade level specifically, and our principals are working on my ability to do that, and I look forward to engaging with them. And then finally, on a side note, again, to all of our student athletes who I know who are really trying very hard to do the right thing, congratulations to all of our student athletes and our coaches. And I want to reiterate one more time, and I will do this often, it is imperative in order for us to have a successful end of the year from now until the end of the year in June. It is incredibly important that we are beyond mindful to not have large social gatherings over the weekend. We want to make sure our kids come back, that they're safe, our staff is safe. And the last thing we want to start doing is quarantining classes because of what's happening over the weekend. So let's keep that in mind as we re-engage and we have our kids transition back. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hines, and thank you for that last, especially for that last statement about people being extra mindful and taking taking this as seriously as we need to at this time. Thank you for that. Okay. One sec. Okay. I have here that the item 8.1 is the board minutes. That's the only one that we have though. Okay, gonna make a motion for the, what is, I'm a little confused, for the April 6th BOE meeting minutes. Oh, sorry, okay. March 23rd meeting minutes. I was reading that wrong. I'm gonna make a motion for the approval of the March 23rd board meeting minutes. Do I have a second? Okay, thank you, Ms. Bays. Ms. Callahan, could you please do the roll call? You muted.
Yes, certainly. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Weisberg,
Yes.
Ms. Bays,
Yes.
Ms. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Epstein,
Yes.
Ms. Gilliar,
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, moving right along, we're up to our discussion item, and that is the 2021 to 22 budget. And as I think it's been said, later on in a little while, the board will be voting on whether to approve this budget. Turning it over to Ms. Callahan.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Our discussion this evening, I think, will be brief relative to the proposed budget that we are recommending to the Board of Education this evening. Since our meeting on March 2nd, there have been no changes to the draft budget of $167,268,942. As previously stated, while we are comparing this budget to pre-COVID, and we are adding 3 positions, pedagogical positions, we are eliminating 3 elementary positions due to retirement. In addition to that, we have added during the 2021 school year 5 cleaners whose positions will remain in 2021. So they are additions. And we will be eliminating 1 middle school position. We spent extensive time talking about roof sections here at the school district due to the fact that among our 8 buildings, there are at least 100 sections, if not more, because of the timing when buildings are built and additions are added. And in this case, we are asking for funds to do 6 sections at the high school and to do a large section at the South Salem Elementary School. We are not asking for any new programs because, as we have spoken of all year long, this is a year like no other. It is not a year when the superintendent, the cabinet, and all the administration has had an opportunity to hone in on what is needed. And Dr. Hines has been talking the last few months now about our work that is going to begin or has begun actually on mission and vision and equity. And I think in another year, you will see a very different budget, one that does talk about new programming for children based on all the work that will take place over the next 12 months. So the budget that we are recommending has a levy increase of 2.067, which is right in line with our surrounding districts, a budget increase of 2.48%. I do want to remind the community that when the comptroller does his fiscal stress test of all the districts, they look at the participation in the school budget. So whether you feel you can support this budget or not, I do stress to you the importance of exercising your right to vote. The last day that you can register in person, because that is what we have in our district, it's called in-person registration. You can come to the central office up until Thursday, May 13th. You do have the option to go to the department, to the Board of Elections, the Board of Elections website, but I cannot guarantee how often they update their records to our third-party provider. So if you are not registered and you wish to do so, I suggest you come to the school district. You must be 18 as of the date of the vote, a resident of the school district for at least 30 days, and a citizen of the United States. Also, anyone who wishes to run for the school board must return their petition by April 19th. As of today, we have only received one petition back. And I thought that if you would bear with me for another minute, since we have been the recipient of some good news regarding the American Rescue Plan, that I explained to you that while we have not gotten anything in writing as yet relative to the spending plan itself, if this works the way all federal monies have come to us in the past, that means it is not part of this budget. The funds that we expect to receive, which is a wonderful amount for the school district, $4.1 million. This is money that has to supplement what is already being done here in the school district. So we cannot take this money and use it to offset the tax levy for next year. It will be accounted for in a totally different set of books and require different reports. They will all be audited just as the general fund is. But I didn't want anybody to be confused about where was this windfall of money going. In addition, this money is not meant to be spent in 1 year. It may potentially go until September of 2024. Right now, it's as of 2023, but there was an amendment sponsored, and we're waiting to hear whether, in fact, that will go into the law as well. The $4.1 million suddenly becomes $3.5 million because the state is allowed to keep 10% of every school district's allocation. And then the federal government will withhold 1/3 of all the money until the state submits their own application as to how they plan to use the funds. There are some limitations, but certainly things the school district would be planning to do in any event. We are required to spend at least $700,000 of our $3.5 million to address learning loss. And I think that Dr. Mioli would even disagree with the term learning loss, but it will be used in a way to shore up in any areas where we think that there have been weaknesses over the course of this year. The law does specifically speak to low-income children, children with disabilities, homeless, foster care, English as a second language, and any ethnic minorities. And then again, the money is to be used for things like addressing learning loss, assistance to parents who may need support in understanding the best ways to support their children in their learning efforts. Certainly, we talked a lot about the mental health needs of children this year. There is a lot of depression that students are experiencing. And I think that the district is already talking among the administrators and the cabinet as to some immediate uses for some of this money as soon as it starts flowing to the district that will address student mental health services. And then the funds can also be used for facilities purposes, for additional sanitizing, any repairs to the facilities that will help to make the areas more hygienic and to improve the quality of air, although I believe that we have done a wonderful job this year by having HEPA filters in all of our instructional areas. And those HEPA filters require very expensive replacement filters, which I think will have to be added to this list of purchases as well. And then certainly professional development for the custodial staff to help to ever increase our sanitation within the buildings. This is basically the end of my presentation. If the board or anyone else has any questions.
Nora, you're muted.
I see. Okay, thanks. Emily and then Julie, please.
Okay, thank you. Deborah has her hand up also in case you didn't see. Thank you, Mary. My question is, as we heard today, the governor's, the budget, the New York State aid, the budget has been approved or is in the process of getting finalized. And we expect that those numbers will be out to us shortly. There's some talk about the numbers being greater than what was originally put in the governor's executive budget, which are the numbers that we are currently using for state aid, correct? Right. We're using the executive budget numbers.
Yes.
So I believe that we're getting more than what the governor's numbers are that we're using in our current numbers now. So my question to you is, what happens if we get more? I mean, I know it's an if right now, we don't know for sure, but what happens, for instance, we have 2.1 million that we are taking out of reserves and putting it into our budget now so that we can balance it. Let's say we get $2 million more in state aid. What is the process then? What happens? How do we do, since we're adopting or we're discussing to adopt tonight? So I'm just asking process-wise, what happens?
I believe my recommendation to the superintendent, who would ultimately make a recommendation to the board, mine would be to take any additional funds and to use those to offset the overage that you will experience in the current year's budget. We have spent $3 million in COVID expenses, which is basically what this American rescue program is supposed to be helping districts to recover from, or the American Recovery Act, because it's what we do need to recover from the spending that we had not anticipated this year. So while we would be using 2.1 million for next year's budget, there is still going to be more money needed to come out of your savings to offset any overage this year. So I think that taking the money and replacing it into fund balance is a good option.
So we wouldn't need a resolution, right? Because it would be to offset this year's spendings. It would go into fund balance, but it would be to offset, so we wouldn't need a new resolution.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Julie, Deb, who I apologize if there's something about your hand on your white background that I never see it, but I do apologize. I don't know what it is. It's not you. Don't take it personally. Okay. Julie, then Deb, then Rachel, then Beth.
So my question was actually Emily's question, and so thank you for illuminating us on that. I just want to make sure I understand. So then we can take state aid funds to replenish our fund balance for the preceding year. It doesn't have to go into programming or anything. It can go anywhere from that standpoint.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, I was going to ask the question about the money as well, but I do have another question. So, Ms. Callahan, thank you very much for the presentation. And just for people who may be tuning into this conversation for the first time, the board has been discussing the budget for months upon months upon months. And you did have a slide presentation that very neatly laid out all of the things you mentioned in terms of what's into the budget, what's changed a little bit. And I think that you mentioned that presentation was March 2nd. So people who the slide presentation isn't on the website, but if people want to, the draft
I'll double check on that tomorrow. Thank you.
You're very welcome. But if people wanted to see you live, explaining it, they could always tune into the March 2nd meeting. That was the only other thing I wanted to add, that this is not the first time the board is discussing this. So just because we don't have a presentation deck in front of us is because we've heard it so many times already. So thank you.
Okay, I think I said that it's either
Rachel, then Beth.
Rachel and, okay, thank you.
I wouldn't mind waiting either, but that's okay too. So I'm just going to ask the same question that I keep asking Mary. And last time I was premature to follow up on it, but I think that now we might have an answer. My concern has been this 183 student enrollment drop that we've experienced, and whether or not we can confirm it was temporary or whether these people are not actually coming back to the district next year, because of course we don't want to be caught unawares and have a whole bunch of extra children in schools where we have planned on staffing for 183 fewer children. Do we have that information yet, Mrs. Callahan, or should we be waiting a little longer?
As of this morning, we have 70 fewer applicants for private or parochial school transportation. We did not see a similar increase in our central registration office. So we have 70 children somewhere floating around that either have not applied for transportation. They may be families that think that because the governor kept extending the transportation deadline last year, that they can come in at any time they want. We have tried to notify families. We have sent emails to all families telling them the deadline, as we originally knew it, for April 1st was their deadline. But we still have 70 fewer students signed up. They seem to be at all levels, high school, middle school, and elementary. So it would be difficult, I think, to say that in one particular school, we need one particular section increased, at least not at this moment.
Thank you. So parsing from your numbers, though, that means of those 183 or so, the rest we think are permanently gone, or at least for now. They're not, 70 seems to me a much better wild card number than 183, especially if it's spread among all of the levels. So thank you for following up on that.
Sure.
Beth?
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that almost always we adopt a budget prior to the state's adoption of their budget. So almost always, we do not know what our state aid number. In fact, in my 6 years, I would be fairly certain to say that we've never known. Additionally, Mary can correct me if I'm wrong, but no matter what that number is that's published in Newsday and everywhere else, it's never the actual number. That
That's
number
correct.
always changes, right? And so we're not in any position different this year than we have been in other years where there have been conversations that it might be higher or it might be lower. So we all just need to remember that at the end of this year, whatever's left from this year's budget goes to fund balance, just like it does every other year. So if in 2021, 2022, we get an additional $2 million, we still can only spend what we've budgeted for unless there's some kind of an emergency resolution. And whatever is left at the end of the year would go back into fund balance, which would help, as Mary said, that's sort of the process that offsetting this expenditure is going to take. So this isn't really different. It just happens to be different or feel different perhaps because it's COVID and because it's actually late, which I think only twice it's been late, but it's late this year. But this is a fairly typical process. We always go through this. We rarely know exactly what our state aid number is when we adopt our budget. I'm just saying this for the community to understand that this is sort of the bubble that we work in every year. We have to adopt a budget prior usually to the state adopting their budget. We have to do all of this with sort of pretend or hopeful numbers. Mary's been always very good about trying to lowball that number to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a position where we've budgeted for money we don't have. And I think we're doing that again this year. And I think we're in a fairly comfortable position, and that whatever is left at the end of the 2021, 2022 budget year will go into fund balance like it has in the past. And hopefully that will help restore some of the fund balance that we're spending this year to deal with some of these pandemic expenses. So Mary, please correct me if anything I've said is incorrect or out of line.
The only thing I would say is that I have always used the state aid number from the state less any federal dollars that they choose to add in, rather than saying I lowball it.
That would be safe, right? But again, I'm being very specific because we need to be safe. We can't put ourselves in a position where we've budgeted for money that the state, it happens. We've been in a position where we budgeted for money that the state did not end up giving to us, and that's not a comfortable position for a school district to be in. So Mary's always made sure that we are in a position where we can fund our budget, whatever that happens to be, and we're not laying off staff mid-year because that would clearly be a very uncomfortable position to be. All of that said, I personally just wanted to say thank you to Mary. 6 years, 5 budget cycles that the two of us have worked together as budget chair and for the board and budget chair for the school district. And I have enjoyed every minute of it. I never thought I would. I was never a budget person, but Mary, you've taught me a lot. I feel that I have a pretty good handle and understanding of all of this. And I just wanted to speak personally about how much I've appreciated our time and our work together and how much I'm going to miss having you, because I know I could always trust everything that came out of your mouth to be the best truth as you knew it. And I always felt very confident and comfortable in everything that we've been given from you, and that our district was in very good hands with you. So I wanted to say how much I appreciated our time together and how much I'm going to miss you next year.
Thank you very much. And I see coming across the bottom of my screen that the state aid runs are in. So
that may be why Larry's here.
That's what I was trying to share too. Yeah.
So who has them? So since we have the state aid runs, can we?
No, I don't think that's really wise, because you have to back out the federal pre-K programs. Without seeing it, I don't know what they're adding. What they're saying is a subtraction. What's accurate relative to transportation, because it's based on expenditures from the prior year. And remember, last year we did not have the same expenses as many other school districts because we did not pay our vendors for the last 3 months. So the numbers do need to be looked at carefully.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Beth, because we all share the wonderful sentiments that you expressed for Mary and for this being your last budget cycle with us. But there'll be more time to thank you later. Are there any other, Larry? Yes.
So just wanted to sort of reiterate what Beth was saying. One of the other school districts are not allowed to operate at a negative budget. So therefore, our budget always has to have a little leeway in it because, again, if an unexpected expense comes in, that can cause us to have to make other cuts in the middle of the year that we don't want to do. And we play it a lot closer to the vest than a lot of school districts do, because we have Mary, and Mary is really good at getting us extremely close without ever getting us in trouble. So I do appreciate that. The other thing is we put a lot of money from reserves into the budget this year to keep the tax levy lower. And I think in the back of at least some of our minds, we were hoping that our state aid run would be better than we were hoping, and that our damage to the our reserve fund wouldn't be as great. So certainly that money coming in is going to put us in a little bit better stead for our auditors when they come in and see where our fund balances are. So I don't think this would be the time to go and make a last minute adjustment because we have a little bit more money. We have a savings account to refill that's almost empty. And also, I've been with Mary for 16 years, and every year, you know, she just pulls rabbits out of the hat, and it's amazing. We start like with, what are we going to do? And we end up with, wow, we can do what we need to do. And we can do it in a fiscally prudent way. And we do spend a significant amount less per student than our neighbors do. And a lot of that is due to married stewardship and making sure that we only spend money exactly where it's needed. And contrary to what some people say, every single dollar that the school district spends is for the benefit of the kids.
Thank you, Larry. Any other questions for Mary or comments on the budget before we proceed? Okay, I'm not missing any hands there, am I? No, thank you. Okay, committee reports, policy and personnel. Deb?
Thank you. My screen froze for a little while. There's nothing new since our last meeting. Our next policy and personnel meeting will be April 21st, 9:30 in the morning.
Thank you. Budget. I did see that the budget meeting for next week has been postponed.
We're gonna cancel next week's because we all deserve a breather because we've been killing ourselves getting a budget together. And we don't really have anything to discuss because the budget will be proposed. Additionally, we're looking to reschedule some of the budget meetings. That's a personal thing for me. I now have class on Monday, so I have to look for a different day. So all of those meetings will be rescheduled to be announced. I think we only had 2 more scheduled anyway, so we'll look to find some different times, and we can proceed with some of our facilities conversations as we usually do after this year. And then once the budget is passed, as we all are sure it will be, we can start having some deeper conversations, but those are actually difficult to have until we know exactly what we're working on for next year.
Okay, thanks. Curriculum, Rachel?
Again, no update since our last meeting, but our next, it's actually a joint curriculum policy committee meeting. Is Thursday morning of this week at 9:30, and the subject will be homework.
Great, thank you. Safety and substance, Julie?
We had the privilege of having our first meeting today. So we gathered around and reviewed the mission statement to rework it to fit all of our applicable needs, as well as brainstorm for the upcoming school year of programs and initiatives we want to bring forward. And we'll begin to plan for Unity Day at our next meeting in May, and Unity Day is October 20th, 2021, but we're going to begin planning now for the future, and the May date has yet to be determined.
Okay, thank you. The next is the Diversity Committee. We actually have the Diversity Committee on pause right now, and we will announce when the next meeting is going to be. We're kind of waiting to get a little further along with our work with NYU Metro and their innovations in equity and social change, the work that we are doing. So I will get back to the community on that. Many of the members on the Diversity Committee, or a significant number of the people on the Diversity Committee, are also on the Lead Learner Committee, which is part of the equity work. So the next committee is the Legislative Task Force. Do you want to?
We haven't had a meeting.
Yeah, okay. Okay, now we are on the action items, and that would be, just want to pull out a couple of things here before we do the, do we want to separate out the budget vote, or just do it as part of the consent agenda? Does anybody have any feelings about that? I guess it doesn't matter.
Could I say something, Mrs. Johnson, not about the budget, but actually Tessa Jordan called something to my attention, that the district safety plan that is on the agenda for the board's approval, that had been on the March agenda for community comment, the 30 days. This is a revised report for the 2021 year. There's a mistake in the agenda. It says 21-22, and I'm sure that's what caused the confusion. So that's item 12.1A. No, wait, I'm sorry. It's 11.2.1. And that should say the 2021 school year. And that's why it would have the titles of some people who may be retiring, because it's a revision to a plan the board approved last July. The state said that because of COVID, certain sections needed to be updated. And so the existing staff are noted in that revised plan. And
Well, we have to pull that out and amend it, right?
Sorry, Larry?
We have to pull that out and then amend the resolution and then vote on it separately?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
And it should say 2021 instead of 21-22 school year.
Okay, and what item is that again, Mary?
It's 11.2.1.
Maybe if we do that at first, then we can add it back into a consent agenda rather than having to pull things out.
Okay, so do make a propose a resolution to amend the revised district-wide school safety plan to say that it is for the 2021 school year.
Correct.
Okay, so that's the resolution. Okay, I'm going to move to do that. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mary, if you could do the roll call on that.
Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Weisberg,
Yes.
Ms. Bays,
Yes.
Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Epstein,
Yes.
Ms. Gilliard,
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to mention that we're accepting 2 donations that are on the agenda tonight. One is we're accepting the donation in memory of Patricia Loveland from the Port Washington Association of Educational Secretaries. Ms. Loveland was a very active PWAES member and secretary of Manor Haven Elementary for 40 years. The bench will be placed near the front entrance of the Manor Haven Elementary School. So that's a lovely donation, and thank you to the PWAES. We are also accepting a donation from the Sousa HSA for the purchase of additional art supplies for each student due to the COVID protocols at Sousa. So thank you to the HSA of Sousa for stepping up to the plate and helping out with that. Okay, now I'm going to move to for the consent agenda, which is items 11.1 through 11.6.2. Do I have a second? Okay, Mrs. Weisberg. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Weisberg,
Yes.
Ms. Bays,
Yes.
Ms. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Epstein,
Yes.
Ms. Gilliard,
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now on to policies that are up both for second reading and our approval, and there's a couple that are just up for first reading. Policy 5633, gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms. Policy 2430, suspension of policies. Policy 3230, administrative organization and operation. These policies are on for adoption with the recommendation of superintendent. I'm going to make a motion for that. Do I have a second?
Excuse me, I believe it's only the first one that's for
Oh, is it only the,
adoption.
okay, the other one is on for first reading?
Correct.
Okay, I see. Okay, so the 5633 gender neutral single occupancy bathroom policy. Making a motion to adopt that. Do I have a second? Okay, Beth?
Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Weisberg,
Yes.
Ms. Bays,
Yes.
Ms. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Epstein,
Yes.
Ms. Gilliard,
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And now the policies 2430, suspension of policies, and policy 3230, administrative organization and operation. Those two are up for first reading, just so we know. Okay, item 13, old business. Okay, Deb.
My cue. Thank you. I wanted to follow up on Dr. Heinz's plan to reopen fully Weber and Schreiber, and I have some follow-up questions. A bunch of districts have gone full in throughout Long Island, and with that and less than 6 feet of social distancing, they are seeing increased numbers of students being quarantined because they're now considered classroom close contacts. We haven't really seen that at Schreiber because the kids have been 6 feet apart, but now with everybody in, they will be less than 6 feet. So given the continued social gatherings and rising positive cases here in Port, and I know that you urged people at the beginning of the meeting to please obey the guidelines about social distancing and mask wearing, but given the historical trajectory we've seen in our district, what plan is in place to determine if full in should be modified or even discontinued here in Port Washington? If we start to see the same type of increased numbers of students being quarantined that other districts are seeing. That's my first question.
And thank you for that question. Listen, I think there are a lot of realities that we will have to contend with. That may be one of them. My hope is we don't. With all the planning, with all the money that the board has spent, as far as looking to bring our students back at the secondary level in a safe manner, my hope is we don't get to that decision. But if we do, clearly I believe if there's a significant rise with our students and classes being quarantined, and looking through our contact tracing, then we would need to reconsider at that time all in. I can't and I won't give a specific number of what that would be. But I know that after consulting with certainly our principals and certainly with the cabinet, that I would make that recommendation if need be. But again, I will continually pound that drum, beat that drum, as far as we need to, not just 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, but it's really over the weekend. So hopefully we don't put ourselves in that position. But, we'll look at the data, we'll see what's in front of us. And if I have to make that recommendation to cease all in, and if we have to go, remote, then we would certainly do that. I hope we don't, though.
Okay, thank you.
Deb, before you continue, because I just want to ask a question based on that, and I know that Larry has his hands up. Dr. Hind or even Dr. Allen, how will we be quarantining now that we have, I think that was part of the question that Deb had brought up last meeting with regards to quarantining. Will we be doing a class? We discussed the scooping method last meeting, and I believe that you were looking into it. So can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, Doc, we were just talking about that earlier today, actually, as part of these potential scenarios. So Dr. Allen?
Yes, hi, thank you. So the rule has not changed in terms of close contact. So even if we are bringing students back in closer than 6 feet, I had a conversation with Dr. Buckman a couple of weeks ago, and she was very clear that closer than 6 feet for more than 10 minutes will still stay in effect. So if we have a student identified, we're going to have to draw that 6-foot circle around the student and consider scooping out those particular students so that they can be quarantined. Every situation is so unique. So that's why I say, generally speaking, when we start looking at our elementary level, for example, they're in the same classroom all day long. They're all kind of moving around. Teachers are moving around. So we've taken a little bit more of a conservative approach there in quarantining the entire classroom. When we move now to that secondary model of all in, I don't know what advice they will give us when it comes to Weber and Schreiber, but we'll go through that again with them in full detail, given how long they're in each classroom, and see what they advise.
Larry has a question. Thank you, Dr. Allen.
Yeah, more of a comment. I think certainly if we're quarantining a lot of people, that's a disruption to the school day in some ways and has to be dealt with. But that would not be as concerning to me as a significant rise in cases, because those cases then multiply outside of school, and that affects the entire thing. So I would think that we would treat those numbers differently. If 30 people are quarantined because one person has it is different than 30 people being quarantined because 6 people have it. And so anyway, I just wanted to bring that point up. I mean, I know you're looking at those figures all the time, but I didn't want people to get the wrong impression here. If we can maintain the school day adequately and safely, we will. And if we need to pivot or do something different, we will have to do that as well.
Thank you, Larry. Anybody else have anything to comment regarding Deb's initial old business? Okay, any new
Okay,
business?
so you all took care of question number 3. Oh, Rachel put her hand up. I'll wait.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. I have an additional comment after, but we can finish with yours first.
Okay, so the question about the contact tracing and the scooping, that could be, I guess, potential 8 children or 8 students if you have the positive case in the center. I just want people to understand the possible number of kids that could end up in quarantine at Weber and Schreiber, and it's what's happening at just about everywhere where they've gone full in with less than 6 feet. Some districts have managed to keep 6 feet, which is great. We just we don't have that space. We don't have a physical plan. So that was my question number 3 about the contact tracing. And my next question, I sat in Dr. Pernick's coffee, where we Tuesday, so I guess it was yesterday, and some parents were making comments about the desk shields, that they had heard comments from their students. And I have a student at Schreiber. I heard comments. I'm hearing it from her friends. So the desk shields are not very popular. There are issues with vision, especially for the kids who are in the very back of the classroom. They have to look through 4 layers of plexiglass. The teachers have problems seeing the kids as well. There are a bunch of issues. So my question is, if and when the New York State Department of Health decides to follow the CDC guidelines and say, we don't need the desk shields anymore, will Port Washington remove the desk shields?
So when we walked through the buildings yesterday, both Schreiber and Weber, and I'll specifically speak about Schreiber right now. Yeah, I mean, it is a very big difference, especially coming back after spring break, and then the kids come back and they're presented with a desk shield on their desk. It's not popular. And the reality is, it's usually some things that aren't popular. It's always at the expense of something if we're looking at the big picture. And the big picture is bringing our kids back. And unfortunately, there are some things that we would have to contend with that people may not be happy with. And the desk shields are one of them. Now, I can honestly say our elementary kids who have been living with our desk shields all year learned how to live with that. And I'm not trying to, downplay the glare that our teachers will see or that our students see, but we will have to overcome that if that means we can bring all our kids back. And so, if the New York State Department of Health decides to say we don't need desk shields anymore, and they adopt what the CDC says, then yes, we will remove them. And then the next question will be, well, why do we buy them to begin with, right? And we don't know when that will be. But again, with the information that we have in front of us right now, this is the best case scenario to bring all our kids back. And it's going to make some people, uncomfortable having their, the desk shield there. And I can honestly say, listen, I know, I saw some of the desks. You can put your Chromebook there. You can't spread out. You can't put your papers there. You can't do other things. If you're an art student, you have to probably do some things on your lap. I totally get it. But this is part of where we are. We are resilient. We have to make accommodations and we have to work through this. And I believe we can do this. And these students have done incredible things over this past year. And I know they can do this as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Rachel.
So I have a comment question, because my questions are always comment questions. I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that we're going all in at Weber and Schreiber, and we've said that we are going to eliminate the hybrid option and we won't maintain that flexibility for students. I think what often happens in school districts is before you make a decision, you hear from a very vocal group of parents who feels very strongly that something should be a certain way. And then you make the decision, and all of a sudden you hear from this other group of parents who wasn't saying anything because they were just fine with the way things were. And you just didn't realize that they were fine because they weren't saying anything. And I think that's happened here, my sense is. I think as an ideal, we are all in agreement. Parents, teachers, all the staff, all the administration are in agreement that kids in school for more time is better. It's better educationally. But this is a weird year. And so we're accepting situations that are maybe not the pinnacle of what we would reach for in a normal year, because we have repeatedly said we understand that social emotional learning and mental health are also paramount in this time, and that we want to be conscious of the fact that we need our students to also be mentally healthy and comfortable. So all that said, I'm hearing from a lot of parents and a lot of students who are really upset about this decision to take hybrid away. And what I'm hearing from some very well-spoken high school and middle school students is for them, their family could handle the two worlds. And it was a nice middle ground for them because they got to see other people's faces and they got to have that in-person interaction. But they also looked forward to having the days where they were home because being in school is stressful. You have to be wearing a mask. The kids who are conscious of what's going on in the world are very conscious of the fact that they are in an environment masked, now desk shielded. And this decision to not allow the flexibility of hybrid is really distressing to many of them. I know your concern is, or at least one of your concerns is that allowing some students to stay hybrid sends a mixed message that maybe we don't think the situation is safe. I feel like this shouldn't have to be said, but I don't think that anybody would be supporting this happening if we thought it wasn't safe, right? That's question one on the list on every single decision that's been made this year is it safe? And then we can move on to the rest of it. So I guess my question to this is, I know we sent out a survey to 8th grade and 12th grade parents and asked them what they thought about going all in. I know there wasn't a lot of detail on it about what all in would look like, but we never sent anything to any of the other grades. Is there any thought to using Thought Exchange or some other means to get a better sense of how families and students are feeling about this? Because I think a lot of the driver for all in was an assumption that this was good for students' mental health, that being all in was better for them. And now that it looks like there is some group of students for whom that's not true, and this is actually potentially worse for their mental health, are we thinking about assessing that in any way and potentially making a change if that does seem to be accurate?
Dr. Hines, you okay if I take this one?
Sorry. Yes, Dr. Mealy, thank you.
So, I mean, I'd like to take it because I've been one of the ones who've been urging the superintendent to not have hybrid. And I think, Ms. Gilliard, that I think you answered several parts of that question already. I don't think there's any disagreement, any real disagreement over the fact that live instruction, is really better for students than remote when it's safe. And so, I think it's been maybe the last 5 board meetings in a row where I've been asked about Weber Wednesdays and how come we can't bring kids in on Wednesdays when they were in on 2 other days a week, et cetera, et cetera. No matter who you voted for president last time, you would be looking at a president who wants everybody all in, and all of the arrows are going in that direction. I think that, change is hard and change causes stress. And so I'm not sure it's a compelling argument to say that it's, the social emotional well-being of the students is at stake here. I think we do, the board has acted the last 2 meetings to provide for the safety of all students. And I think that we are still giving a choice. If students or their parents don't feel that it's, safe or safe enough, or for whatever reason, they don't feel like it's a good choice for them, they have the choice to be remote. And that part has been working very well at the secondary level, for most of the year in terms of both the hybrid part and the remote part. So I think, on the other hand, it is very compelling to have all students come back for both curriculum and instruction reasons and for mental health reasons. We have access to kids, we can eyeball them. They'll have access to all of the adults in the building. I just, I understand the piece about the change, but other than that, I really think that we've set this up, we've set dates, we've expended money, and I think we need to make the change, and I think we need to monitor it as we have been for over a year now, to see how it works out.
And if I could interject, and it's certainly tertiary when we talk about the finances of the district, but the American Rescue Plan actually requires us to make sure that our plan includes the return of in-person instruction in order to receive these funds. As I said, that's not the primary reason, but it has to be considered somewhere along the line when we consider we have already spent $3.1 million for COVID expenses.
Mrs. Callahan, not right now, but can you point us towards the details on that? And what is the time frame on that? What percentage it needs to be? I just would be interested to know mostly if it's actually a barrier to hybrid, and also if our fully virtual population messes with our ability to do that at all.
But whatever information I have, I'm happy to pass along.
Thank you.
And show you where it's made that statement.
Dr. Mealy, on your comments, I have to say, I think there's something logically inconsistent in saying that in-person instruction is better. And so we want everybody to be in all the time, and then saying, well, they have a choice, they can go fully remote. Because it seems like we've admitted that going fully remote is not as good.
Well, but we've had that choice all year. The state, by the way, requires us to have that choice. But I don't think it's inconsistent at all, because we still have a safety issue, and there are still families. I have people in my family who won't get vaccinated. There are people who still have conditions that make it highly dangerous for them, to be anywhere near any kind of danger. There are lots of litmus tests to what makes that statement true. And so I think that, however, both from a curriculum instruction standpoint and a social and emotional standpoint, I think it's compelling on both counts for students to be in school if they feel that it's safe enough and their families feel it's safe enough to do so.
I've had a few families reach out to me as well, Rachel, as far as them being concerned for their kids because they've been in this routine, in this schedule for the whole year, and I do understand where they're coming from. One thing that has been consistent throughout the year is that whatever recommendation or decision I make, half the people are not happy. That has been consistent certainly throughout the year. And I'm not saying that tongue in cheek. It's just the reality of what's happening during this pandemic. And I certainly don't want to come across, because it's not my intention at all to not understand or to empathize where our parents and our students are coming from. One thing for certain is, the more that we work out now, the more that we could really truly understand what all in really means before September. It allows us to make really strong recommendations moving forward for our plan. And so there are a lot of different reasons for this, but first and foremost, it's, I humbly believe it really is really what's best for our kids in a whole multitude of ways. And, I feel badly about our parents who want the hybrid option. Listen, as far as the flexibility, I think as a school district, I think we've been very flexible throughout the year. And so some parents are saying, why aren't you being flexible now? In this instance. And I think the flexibility, as Dr. Mealy underscored, is the fact that there is still another option as far as if they're not comfortable, they can stay home remotely. And I know the principals are sending out surveys to see how many of our students will be coming back. I think that will very important information as far as we making our decisions. But we are preparing, and I can't wait to see our kids who do come back, and of course kids who are remotely learning. I want to make sure that they still feel part of our school community in every which way.
Nora, can I just add something to that?
Emily, I just wanted to tag
Yeah,
on,
go
just because of what Mike just said, that it sort of lends itself to that. I did want to make the point that remote students at the high school have been live streaming for the year. Dr. Mueller or Dr. Hines, that if you guys could speak a little bit to that point, that the remote for high school really won't see any change. The middle school, clearly, because those kids were, because of the way the hybrid was handled at the middle school differently, there will be a change for those students who are fully remote. But Dr. Hines or Dr. Mealy, could you speak a little bit about that, at least at the high school, since the high school is really what's changing in the immediate?
I'm not sure.
You're right about that, Beth.
I believe the high school remote students have been live streaming full time. Yes, I do believe I'm correct about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Weber as well, though.
Yes, Weber too.
But Weber is different because the Weber kids were only in every other day. So all of the kids, it wasn't live streaming. They were live streaming every other day. And then every other day they were in a remote classroom. At the high school, the kids are live streaming every day if they're remote.
Correct.
There is no remote classroom at the high
Okay.
school.
Yeah.
There-
There is a distinction.
I'm missing the distinction because
The distinction is the fully remote
You're
students
saying
at
that
Weber,
at Weber, we're on a Google Meet 2
Yes.
days a week because some of
with
their
all of their
teachers
class.
were out
were-
together.
No, well, the whole class was out every other day, right? But the high school students have always been only live streaming.
If you're fully remote, yes.
Correct, if you're fully remote. I just wanted to make that point because there's been questions as to what's going to happen to the students who are fully remote and what the changes are going to look like. And clearly there will be changes for the fully remote students at Weber, but the high school students will see no difference in their day to day. So Dr. Mealy, Dr. Hines, if you would just speak to that, because we've clearly heard
I
that.
think
from
we
a few
just did,
parents.
Beth. I think we
Well,
clarified
I'm
it.
speaking to it, but I don't have a high school student and I don't work in the building. So I would just like somebody to.
But you're a parent that knows.
So now that I understand it, yes, you are absolutely correct. Dr. Hines said, spoke about walking through Schreiber yesterday to look at the desk shields, but we did obviously see a number of classes that were being taught, and we happened to come upon a band class where the teacher was teaching outside under a tent with a Chromebook, teaching a number of students at home on their instruments and a number of students in front of him simultaneously, and conducting them all at the same time. I don't know how that happened with headphones and a microphone. So yes, the live streaming at the high school has been, and that kind of goes towards, I know we're not answering the questions from the community comments, but it kind of goes towards that question. We've come a long way in since September in terms of having no cameras and no live streaming to the repertoire that many of the teachers have developed over this year. So yes, you are correct. And thank you for adding that.
Thank you, Dr. Mealy. I appreciate that.
Okay, so my comment is actually kind of trying to take Rachel's comment back to old business, which is we had discussed at back in March, I believe, or I don't remember when, I've lost track of time, that we would be talking about the social and emotional at the secondary. And I think I just want to remind us as a board that we are going to be discussing the social and emotional at the secondary level, the first meeting in May that we have on May 4th. And I think it's important that we do discuss it as we did, we asked for it back then, because I think Rachel points out there is a lot of anxiety, and change, as we know, creates a lot of anxiety. And just the fact that there are desk shields and the kids are walking into the building with the desk shields is going to create anxiety. These kids have not had a full classroom. And now, they did in 2019, classrooms were full, but now they've gotten used to the 6 feet apart. So I think it's important that we talk about how we will be addressing these students when they come back. And I know, Dr. Hines, you said you're going to meet with every student before they come back. And clearly that's going to help maybe ease some of their anxiety. But I think we should definitely talk about what programs we're putting in place and what types of efforts we're doing as far as outreach is concerned for the social emotional for our students. I think it's something that we may want to consider for our parents, because we're slowly going back to or preparing for something that's in September. Every child will be in the building, and so I think it's a good segue into just reminding everybody on the board that in May we will be talking about that, and we will have our new director of guidance. She just started yesterday, correct? Monday? I forget what day we are. So I think that'll give her some time to also get herself acclimated and give us some ideas on improvements and things that we can do. So that was just kind of like I was trying to bring it back to old business, which is what this topic of conversation is now.
So if I can add to that, and I appreciate what Rachel's bringing up as far as the concerns of parents. When we initially did our thought exchange with the community, and I underscored the three major themes that surfaced. Really, it was mental health, as I said before. It was bringing our kids back at the secondary level, very, very strong. And then, making sure our kids are connected in some ways. And I believe part of the SEL component, the social emotional, it's not the learning, it's just the living, is bringing them kids back and them being around their peers physically. I think that's incredibly important, and that's part of the solution. It's not the solution, but it's part of it. It has a lot of different edges to it, as Emily, as you pointed out, and we'll definitely articulate that at our soon to be board meeting.
If I may, I think the question part of my giant comment got lost. I think my concern is, and I appreciate so much that you're concerned about our students' mental health, because I think it's a progressive educator who understands that healthy students also perform better and learn better, and that it has to be a bedrock of the education for them to be mentally healthy. I appreciate that a lot, but it seems to me like we are drawing the line between mental health improvement and going all in. So my question part was, are we going to be using thought exchange or some other means to communicate with families and students too? More importantly, students, right? Because these are all students who are 11 through 18, who are old enough to communicate how they're feeling about it as well. Are we going to use some means of communicating with them? And will we consider a change to policy on this if it becomes apparent that maybe it isn't something that is going to be the right mental health decision for every student?
I almost started speaking, being muted. So as far as thought exchange with the students, I'm very open to doing that. I think that's a wonderful way to elicit information for our students. As far as using thought exchange to see if this is something we should be doing, I mean, listen, and I really mean this in the nicest way possible. Sometimes I have to make recommendations and decisions that will make some people unhappy. It's just it's the nature of this position, and I'm a people pleaser, so it pains me when there's a subset of our population, whether it's students or parents or educators, whoever it may be, who aren't on board, no pun intended, with a recommendation or decision. I firmly believe this is the right way to go. Now, I mean, it'd be silly for me to say, if there's like if I have administrators and I have other people saying, Mike, let's look at some other stuff, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. I trust the fact that what we're doing right now is really sound for the rest of this year. And again, just as important, it's setting us up for success for next year. And the more students I believe that we have, and by the way, I think most of us would agree, school is one of the safest places to be. It really, really is. I think it's been proven time and time again that it is. Now, as I said in the beginning of this board meeting, what we need to do, And when I say we, not so much the board or administration, it's for our parents who are listening, and certainly for our, I will say, our middle school students. If you're watching this board meeting, or secondary students, I'll say, it's really the stuff that happens after school and over the weekend that could make this a little more difficult than it needs to be. So I'd like to just end at least this question for now with, I feel very confident that we will do a really great job moving forward. And let's see how it goes. I think it's going to go well. Fingers crossed. I agree, Deb.
Mike, just to make one more sort of point here and wrap up a little bit of what you're saying. Our students have adapted to things we never thought they would adapt to. They have overcome things we never thought kids could overcome. And eventually they're going to have to overcome being back in school full time. That's just a fact. This is not going to be a forever thing. So I think, you know, I think sometimes it's hard to see what is always the right thing for you until you've sort of gotten to the other side of it. And so I think that we sort of have to use our best judgment. We have to listen to the best experts. And I think that's what you're doing. I think every expert is saying kids should be back in school. Every expert across the world is saying they need to be back in school full time. And I think most of us who have spent some time working with kids, especially in a school setting, understand that consistency is of primary importance to students, and being in school every day is going to give them the most consistent and dependable sort of day-to-day existence. And I think that making that point as the leader of the school district is an important point, and I applaud you for standing by what your education and all of the experts are telling you. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and just remind everybody that though we're concerned about high school students adapting to desk shields, the elementary school kids did. Though we're concerned about people, I mean, they've adapted to learning in their bedrooms, they adapted to learning at the library, they adapted to learning in places that we never thought they were going to be able to learn. It's one more adaptation, and it's going to be either now, it's going to be in September, it's going to be at some point that the kids are going to have to adapt to full-time school again. And I don't think it'll take them as long, because they are so much better at this than all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Mike. Larry, do you have a question or?
Just a quick comment. At the reopening committee today, I think it was said, Chris probably has better numbers than me, something like 48 of the fully virtual kids are coming back into school, which I think says something about the parents' perception of how schools are operating, and of course the fact that more vaccines are being done and all this other stuff. But if I got the number right, about 1/3 of the fully virtual kids are not going to be fully virtual anymore. So it's not directly related to this, but it's an indication of where people are beginning to look at it. And this is coming from somebody who is fully vaccinated and still wears a mask and still won't set foot in a restaurant. So.
Okay, I'm going to move on now. Is there any new business? Okay. Okay.
Just a really quick thing, and I know Mrs. Callahan will do a better job of this than me, but I just looked at the numbers, and our increase in foundation aid is about 1.5 million. And the other big adjustment is we no longer have the CARES adjustment where the governor took back all the federal funds, which is another $1.1 million. So I haven't looked at all the things that went into his services aid or anything else, but it does look like we'll be able to put some money back in the bank.
Except that, Larry, I quickly looked at it too, and the American Rescue Plan money is not what we were told we were getting. American Rescue, I think, says 3.5.
That's because they take their 10%.
Right.
The state's taking their VIG.
Right. So
Yeah.
but that's what we have to remember, right? It's the 10%.
Right.
So
Right, but I'm
number that
looking, yeah.
that was published, and the number that some people believe we're getting is 4.17. But when I guess they took their 10%, and you're the mathematician here.
Right, yeah, so that's it, but our foundation aid should be, I'm not sure how they can play games with that like they could do
No, they
on
couldn't.
transportation aid or anything else.
Yeah.
So it does look like we are in slightly better shape, which makes me feel a little bit better for how deep we went into our savings.
Yes.
No, that's definitely true.
Nora, we have 3 community members or 2 that have their hands up.
Okay,
So are we ready for that part of? the
I am.
community
Yes,
comment?
I think we're ready.
Okay, so first one is just first name, I believe, Orly. You know what, Nora, going forward, can we just please ask people when they sign in, that they sign in with their first name and their last name and not email addresses? It's difficult sometimes. Okay, so Orly, you can speak. You need to unmute, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so this is Orly Dotan. I'm the parent of 3 kids, a junior in the high school, a 6th grader, and an 8th grader at Weber. And interesting meeting, glad to be here. A couple of thoughts. One, with regards to the desk shields. So I have 3 kids who are all very eager to go back full time. I'm not clear why desk shields are added to classes where the configuration in terms of the distance between desks, as well as the number of students in the class, has remained unchanged. So if it worked until a week or 2 ago, why are we now adding on the desk shields? So that was question 1. Another point to raise is that I already have one child who came back and asked me if they could switch to remote because they just didn't think that they could withstand it. I know that we like to talk about kids being adaptive, and kids are, and humans are adaptive, also to pretty awful conditions. So, you know, there's also an element there that I don't think that we should be touting. We can also be adaptive to pretty awful circumstances. So we need to set the bar high, not low. But I'm concerned about it that, you know, for example, the desk shields are glaring. So one child came home and told me that all they could see was a brick wall that was reflected from the brick wall that was behind her, and that she couldn't see the teachers. So there's adapting to less space or to all kinds of things, but this is pretty ridiculous. And it creates a huge drain to you know, our cognitive and mental resources. So it's also something to consider. You need a lot of self-regulatory capacity to be able to withstand being in conditions that are extremely uncomfortable. So that's just something that I would like to raise. And another point that I wanted to ask is the district tracking the number of kids who are naturally immune because they were sick? Anecdotally, just looking at my family and the connections that we have in the community, there are many kids who already were sick and therefore are naturally immune. And so I'm wondering if the school district is tracking that to get a gauge on kind of natural herd immunity within the school. And now that kids 16 and over can be vaccinated, and many will opt to do so, how will that then impact the practices going forward? Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Okay, next person is Jordan Wolf. Allowed to talk, please unmute.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the meeting, and thank you for having me speak. Sorry, I missed a part of the meeting. I was putting my kids to bed. I came back in around the time that Ms. Gillier was asking about the students returning from the school and their mental health. What I didn't hear was an answer to my previous question of what makes the live streaming different now, and what makes it more acceptable now that students be fully live streaming when before they were getting some version of hybrid at home. So I'm still looking forward to getting a substantive answer to that from either Dr. Hines or someone else in the administration or someone from the board. The other question I have now is, Larry Mr. Greenstein said that 48 families are returning, which is from the elementary into school, virtual, returning into schools. And he took that as a sign that, like, you know, things are going well. I didn't hear anything said about the 160 plus families that are still choosing to stay remote. I want to know, you know, if the district feels like, and Dr. Hines feels like, people are just going to disagree with him no matter what. It feels like a very dismissive attitude towards these families. Why are they still not coming back into the building? Why are they not still feeling safe? You know, all of the protestations of the administration saying we're, you know, doing the best for our kids, it's going to work, it's going to work. I'm sorry, but we've heard that for many, many times this year, and I'm still not hearing that families are being asked what it would take to come back safely. And I'm not hearing what it takes to give those kids whose families don't feel safe the best possible education. Being forced to go into the building to get the best possible education is, frankly, putting our most vulnerable families in a lower tier. And finally, I want to know what is the demographic breakdown of families that are choosing to come into the buildings and families that are home. Nationwide, minority families, Black, Latino, Asian American, are choosing overwhelmingly to stay remote. But I have not heard a lick of those numbers from this district about which families are choosing to stay remote and which ones are in the building. I think that that's an important conversation because race plays a big role into whether people trust the systems that we have in place. Okay, you know, especially when our all-white board and our white superintendent are telling families everything's going to be okay. We have to look at this from the lens of racial equity. So I want to know, what is the breakdown?
Okay.
Amy Loria, AJ Loria, which I happen to know is Amy Loria. Amy, go ahead.
1 second. Hi, thank you very much for letting me speak or ask a question. I just have to say, you guys have done an amazing job this year. It's been extremely difficult and been bent every single which way but loose. My question is, with the numbers rising and the 16-year-olds getting vaccinated, there is definitely also numbers rising at Schreiber. What happens if we get high numbers? And like, I know for me, my kids have to be in school to learn. I mean, I've been, you know, as sad to say, I have special needs kids, but it's been very lucky for me this year that they've been able to go in. But for my daughter, especially being a hybrid child, having the desk shields and everything has caused a lot more anxiety as far as being able to focus, learn, no distraction, things like that. Is there a possibility that you would consider, depending upon if the numbers rise again, or if there ends up being a big quarantine, to possibly bring back hybrid this year? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Loria. Okay. If there are no other questions, I think we will be adjourning.
I think Mr. Wolf put his hands up again.
Okay.
Mr. Wolf, are you asking to speak again? I should allow him to talk. Hold on. Go ahead. I think.
Oh, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Sorry. You know, I get this all the time. I teach remotely, and someone leaves their hand up, and it doesn't get lowered. So
okay, I'm muting you. Okay.
No, I appreciate being back on with you all. I just want to reiterate the point I made before, but I'd also like to, you know, I'd like to say to the board that I appreciate everyone's want for having everything back to normal and having students in. At one point, Ms. Bays, you made the point about this fall, having everybody back in the building. I really wish that is true. I don't know where the crystal ball is that you all may be looking into that says that the pandemic will be fully over and that the remote option will no longer be needed in the fall. I don't understand the rush to urgency to test it out this spring. We know how to run a school when everyone's fully in. That's something that we've been doing forever. It seems to me to be kind of foolhardy that we are using this as some kind of a test period to figure out how to get everyone back into the building. We need to figure out how to make everyone feel safe and how to have that conversation with all of our families. Wanting what's good for our students and wanting what's right for everybody are two different things. And I'm looking forward to having a response from either members of the board on this or from our administrators. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Nora, we have Jessica Weaver would like to speak. So
Okay.
I'm allowing Jessica, just unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for taking the question. I know it's really late. I would love an update at a future board meeting on the rollout of the ruler program. As a SUSA parent, I've seen how successful it is. It was pretty prescient that it was piloted at SUSA, and it's been really great to use in our home and at our school. I would love to see it rolled out to the other elementary schools, and I know that that's in process. I would just appreciate an update at a future meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Are there any other questions?
No.
Going once. Going
I have one follow-up question on that. If we are meeting about social emotional learning and getting an update on how this year has gone and our plans going forward, will the ruler update be part of the May 4th presentation about social emotional learning?
No, May 4th was supposed to be for secondary. I don't believe rulers at the secondary.
Oh, it's
Maybe
only
that's-
secondary on May 4th.
Maybe that's a topic for the curriculum committee, Rachel, because that sounds like it belongs in curriculum as an assessment, right? It's an assessment.
Sounds good. I'm always happy to add an extra meeting. We can do that. I think Dr. Hines and Dr. Gilby will probably want to weigh in on that, though.
Well, I'm just saying, if you want somewhere to go, it could be something that's discussed in curriculum.
All right, why don't we discuss where we're going?
We know Dr. Mioli loves ruler.
We can discuss.
And for good
where we're
reason.
going to discuss ruler. But I would like to thank everybody who's still listening, who's out there, and thank the board, and thank the administration.
Just reminding the board to just leave the meeting, please. When we're done. Okay.
I take that personally. Okay.
Helping here.
As you should.
Okay, anybody who wants to stay behind and chat with an open mic, just let me know. Okay, everybody, good night and thank you. And see you
Thank you, everyone.
tomorrow or the next day. Thank you, everybody. Good night.